The slave markets of Helios 9 always stank of desperation and chemical disinfectant. Ethan Frost pulled his breathing filter tighter as he moved through the crowd, the colony's twin suns beating down through the dusty biodome. He hadn't planned to visit this part of the outpost. Legitimate cargo was his business, but rumors of new arrivals had drawn too many eyes not to investigate. "Quite the specimen, isn't she?" The trader, a bloated centaurian with moisture-slick skin, gestured toward a holding cell where a slender figure sat motionless. Unlike the other captives who shouted or cowered, she remained perfectly still. Her skin shimmered with a silvery green hue that caught the harsh light, and platinum blonde curls cascaded over delicate pointed ears. The emerald eyes that met Ethan's held neither fear nor hope, just calm assessment. "What species?" Ethan asked, feigning disinterest. "Valkyrian, rare find this far from the Emerald Nebula." The trader lowered his voice. "Perfect for companionship or specialized work." Ethan's jaw tightened. The Galactic Compact technically permitted indentured servitude in the frontier colonies, but the practice turned his stomach. He'd seen too many servants work to death in the mineral mines. "Price?" he asked. When the trader named an exorbitant sum, Ethan nearly walked away. But those emerald eyes followed him, and something in them seemed to speak directly to him, not begging, calculating. "Half that," Ethan countered. "She's malnourished, and Valkyrians require specialized atmospheric conditions." An hour of haggling later, Ethan led the alien woman through the crowded marketplace. She moved with surprising grace despite the restraints at her wrists. "I'm Ethan Frost," he said when they reached his rented quarters. "I'm not going to hurt you." He deactivated her restraints. "What should I call you?" "Vexilin," she replied, her voice musical with an accent he couldn't place. "Thank you for your purchase, Master Frost." "Just Ethan, and I didn't buy you to own you." He tossed her a nutrition pack. "Once we're off this rock, I'll drop you wherever you want." Vexilin tilted her head, studying him. "Curious, most humans would simply take advantage." "I'm not most humans." "Evidently." She sat gracefully on the edge of his bed. "You paid considerably more than my market value. Why?" Ethan busied himself with the room's security panel. "Maybe I have a conscience." "A rare commodity in the frontier colonies." Her lips curved into a small smile. "And a dangerous one." Night fell quickly on Helios 9. Ethan offered Vexilin the bed and prepared a sleeping roll for himself on the floor. As he drifted toward sleep, her voice came softly through the darkness. "You should know, Ethan Frost, that I am not what I appear to be." He tensed, hand moving toward his concealed blaster. "I am not a slave," she continued. "I am Vexilin Turnal, intelligence operative for the Valkyrian Imperial Hierarchy." Ethan sat up. "What?" Vexilin leaned forward, her skin glowing faintly in the darkness. "I allowed myself to be captured to track a conspiracy against my government, traitors who have infiltrated our highest ranks and established connections with human extremists." "And I just bought an undercover spy," Ethan muttered. "Perfect." "Your intervention was unexpected," she admitted, "but perhaps fortunate. My mission has become compromised." "How compromised?" As if answering his question, an explosion rocked the building, shattering the window. Vexilin moved with startling speed, pulling Ethan to the floor as energy weapons fired outside. "Extremely compromised," she whispered against his ear. "It seems my enemies have found me, which means they've now found you too." In the flashing emergency lights, her emerald eyes met his. "I need your help, Ethan Frost, and in return I promise you'll receive the full protection of the Valkyrian Empire if we survive the night." Another explosion rattled the walls. Ethan cursed under his breath. His act of mercy had just become something far more dangerous. Dawn broke over Helios 9's eastern dome as Ethan and Vexilin slipped through maintenance tunnels beneath the colony. Her silver-green skin was now concealed under a hooded cloak, platinum curls tucked away. "My ship is docked in Bay 17, Ethan whispered, checking the corridor. "If we can reach it without being spotted, we might have a chance." "They'll be watching all official exits," Vexilin replied. "These mercenaries are thorough." "Who exactly is after you?" Vexilin's emerald eyes darkened. "The Crimson Helix, a shadow organization that's infiltrated both human colonies and the Valkyrian diplomatic corps. I've spent 3 cycles tracking their operations. And they want you dead because I discovered their ultimate plan. They're sabotaging peace negotiations between our species to trigger an interstellar war. She paused at a junction, listening. Wars create profit opportunities for those positioned correctly. Ethan cursed under his breath, and I thought I was just helping a pretty alien. A hint of smile touched Vexelin's lips. You find my appearance pleasing. Valkyrian physiology is often considered unusual by human standards. I didn't mean, Ethan felt heat rise to his face. We should keep moving. They reached a service door leading to the docking bays. Ethan's ship, the Astral Nomad, waited across an exposed loading area, too exposed. 3 guards at the main entrance, Vexelin observed, 2 more patrolling the perimeter. How can you tell? Valkyrians can detect thermal signatures through barriers. She touched his arm, her fingers cool against his skin. They're scanning for us. Ethan pulled out his datapad. Then let's give them something to find. He hacked into the colony's environmental systems, triggering a localized atmospheric warning in the opposite sector. Alarms blared, and 3 of the 5 guards rushed toward the disturbance. Now, Ethan said, grabbing Vexelin's hand. They sprinted across the loading dock. The remaining guards spotted them halfway to the ship and opened fire. Energy pulses scorched the ground around them as they ran. Vexelin suddenly pushed Ethan aside, her body twisting with inhuman flexibility as she dodged a blast. In one fluid motion, she extracted a concealed weapon from her boot and fired. The guard dropped. You're full of surprises, Ethan panted as they reached his ship. Imperial intelligence training, she replied calmly, covering him as he unlocked the hatch. Once aboard, Ethan slid into the pilot's seat. Strap in, this won't be a smooth departure. The Astral Nomad lifted off with a roar, breaking atmosphere protocols as it shot upward. Colony defense turrets tracked them, but held fire. Destroying civilian vessels without authorization would cause more problems than letting them escape. Once they reached orbit, Ethan engaged the jump drive. Stars stretched around them as they entered hyperspace. We're clear, he announced, leaning back in his chair. For now. Vexelin studied the ship's interior with apparent fascination. Your vessel is uniquely configured. It's a customized Terran Pathfinder, not pretty but reliable. Ethan set the autopilot and turned to face her. Now I think you owe me the full story. Vexelin nodded. She released her cloak, revealing the elegant contours of her form. The ship's lights played across her silvery green skin as she sat across from him. I am not merely an intelligence operative, she said quietly. I am Princess Vexelin Turnal, 3rd heir to the Emerald Throne. My royal status is known to few outside the imperial court. Ethan stared. Your royalty. My position afforded unique access to discover the conspiracy. I went undercover personally because our inner circles have been compromised. Her eyes met his. Now you understand the stakes of your involvement. Great, Ethan muttered. I've kidnapped an alien princess. You've rescued me? She corrected, reaching across to touch his hand. Her fingers intertwined with his, the sensation strangely intimate, and perhaps saved 2 civilizations in the process. The warmth of her touch surprised him. For a being with cool skin, she radiated an unexpected heat where they connected. Why trust me? He asked. I'm nobody. You purchased a slave to set her free, Vexelin replied. That reveals much about your character. Her face was close to his now, those emerald eyes studying him with undisguised interest. Besides, she added softly, sometimes fate brings together the most unlikely allies. 3 days in hyperspace gave them time to plan and to learn about each other. Ethan found himself fascinated by Vexelin's descriptions of the Valkyrian homeworld, with its floating crystal cities and perpetual auroras. The Emerald Palace sits atop Mount Seraphim, she explained as they shared a meal in the ship's tiny galley. From there, one can see all 7 moons rise over the luminous sea. Sounds beautiful, Ethan said. Much better than the mining colony where I grew up. You were a miner's. Until I saved enough for passage off-world. He gestured around the ship. Worked cargo runs, security details, whatever paid, eventually earned enough for the Nomad. Vexelin sipped the herbal tea he'd prepared according to her instructions. Yet you risk everything to help a stranger. Maybe I'm tired of looking out for only myself. Their fingers brushed as she returned her cup to the table. Neither pulled away. Your species' temperature is higher than ours, she observed. It's pleasant. Ethan found himself leaning closer. What else do you find pleasant about humans? Before she could answer, the ship's proximity alert blared. They rushed to the cockpit. Imperial patrol vessel, Vexilin identified the approaching craft. But it could be compromised. Can they track us through hyperspace? With specialized equipment, yes. The conspirators have access to experimental technology. The patrol ship fired warning shots across their bow. Ethan dropped the Nomad out of hyperspace, emerging in an asteroid field. Hold on, he warned, taking manual control. What followed was a harrowing chase through the spinning rocks. Ethan piloted with instinctive skill, while Vexilin operated the deflector shields. Twice, they nearly collided with massive asteroids. 3 times enemy fire almost found its mark. There, Vexilin pointed to a particularly dense cluster. The mineral content will confuse their sensors. Ethan thrust the ship into the narrowest of gaps, powering down all but essential systems. They drifted in darkness, waiting. The patrol ship passed overhead, its searchlights sweeping blindly. When it finally moved on, Ethan and Vexilin remained frozen in the dim emergency lighting, bodies pressed together in the confined space. Her breath was cool against his neck. You're an exceptional pilot, she whispered. You're not bad at tactical thinking yourself, princess. Her hand found his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. You may call me Vexa when we're alone. The intimacy of the shortened name wasn't lost on him, nor was the way her body fitted against his, alien yet somehow perfectly complementary. We should restore power, he said, his voice rough. Yes, she agreed, making no move to separate from him. Instead, her lips found his. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration of the unfamiliar. Her skin tasted faintly of cinnamon, her temperature cooler than a human woman's would be, but the sensation ignited something primal within him. When they finally pulled apart, her eyes glowed more brightly in the darkness. Is this permitted? Ethan asked. A princess and a hero, she suggested. On my world, royal heirs are encouraged to choose partners of exceptional quality, regardless of origin. I'm hardly royal material. You underestimate yourself. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. I've watched you, your integrity, your courage. These are the qualities that matter. Later, in the privacy of his quarters, their bodies came together in a dance of discovery. Silver-green skin against sun-bronzed human flesh. Her luminescence increased with her passion, bathing them in ethereal light as they explored the unfamiliar geography of each other's bodies. Our physiologies are compatible, she murmured against his shoulder, but there are differences you might enjoy learning. And learn he did, as she guided his hands to sensitive ridges along her spine that made her gasp when touched. In turn, she discovered the places that made him shudder with pleasure. Afterward, she curled against him, her body temperature having risen nearly to human normal. In 3 days, she whispered, we reach the Crimson Outpost. We may not survive what follows. Ethan pulled her closer. Then we make these days count. The Crimson Outpost hung in space like a malevolent spider, a central hub with 8 extended arms, each housing different operations. Once a legitimate trading post, it had become a haven for those operating in the shadows between empires. Our contact should be in the 4th quadrant, Vexilin said as they approached in a smaller shuttle, having left the Nomad hidden in a nearby nebula. They disguised themselves as mercenaries, Ethan with facial prosthetics that altered his features, Vexilin with skin pigmentation suppressants that dulled her distinctive coloring to a muted gray. If your information is correct, Ethan replied, the evidence linking the conspirators to the attempted assassination of your emperor is here. Along with proof of their planned false flag attacks on human colonies, she checked her concealed weapons. Admiral Krell oversees this operation personally. The same Admiral Krell who serves on your Imperial Council. The very same, our highest military commander betraying everything our civilization stands for. The outpost's docking procedures went smoothly, too smoothly. They moved through crowded corridors filled with species from across known space, all conducting business beyond the reach of official oversight. Their contact, A nervous Procyon with shifting eye stalks met them in a dimly lit establishment where the air was thick with smoke and suspicious glances. "The data core is in the secure archives," he chittered, mandibles clicking anxiously. "Level 8, Krell's personal guards patrol it constantly." "Access codes?" Vexilin asked. "Biometric only, you'll need this." He passed her a small vial. "Direct neural interface, one use only. It contains Admiral Krell's genetic signature." After the Procyon departed, Ethan studied the vial with concern. "That looks dangerous." "It is. Neural interfaces without proper calibration can cause brain damage." Vexilin pocketed it calmly. "A risk I must take." "We'll find another way." "There is no other way, Ethan." Their argument was interrupted when Vexilin suddenly stiffened. "Imperial Guards, 3 o'clock. They're scanning for Valkyrian biosignatures." Without warning, she pulled Ethan into a passionate embrace, pressing him against the wall. Her lips found his as the guards passed nearby. "Public displays confuse their scanners," she whispered against his mouth. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her hips against his. The guards moved on, but they remained locked together, the pretense becoming something more urgent. "We should proceed to the upper levels," she finally said, her voice unsteady. They made their way upward through service corridors, evading security through a combination of Vexilin's imperial knowledge and Ethan's frontier experience. At level 7, they encountered their first real obstacle, a scanning checkpoint that would detect their weapons and false identities. "Maintenance access," Ethan suggested. Vexilin shook her head, sealed and monitored. "Then we create a diversion." Using components from his multi-tool, Ethan constructed a rudimentary explosive device. It wouldn't cause structural damage, but it would trigger multiple alarm systems. When detonated 2 levels below, it created exactly the chaos they needed. Security personnel rushed toward the disturbance, leaving their path relatively clear. The archives were sealed behind reinforced doors. Vexilin removed the neural interface vial. "If something happens to me," she said, pressing a small data crystal into Ethan's hand, "get this to the Imperial Consulate on Proxima Centauri. Ask for Diplomat Thaxos, he can be trusted." "Nothing's happening to you," Ethan insisted. "We go together or not at all." Her emerald eyes softened. 3 weeks ago, I would never have imagined placing my trust, my heart, in a human's hands." She pressed the vial against her temple. The liquid inside glowed briefly before absorbing into her skin. She gasped, her back arching as foreign neural patterns invaded her consciousness. When her eyes reopened, they flashed with internal data streams. She approached the security panel and placed her hand against it. The doors slid open. "Hurry," she said, her voice overlaid with echoes of Admiral Krell's deeper tones. "The interface is degrading my neural pathways." Inside, they located the secure data vault. Vexilin's compromised biosignature granted them access to files revealing the full scope of the conspiracy, including plans for simultaneous attacks on human colonies and Valkyrian outposts, each disguised to implicate the other species. "We need to copy everything," Ethan said, connecting his datapad. "Too late." Vexilin pointed to security monitors showing armed forces converging on their location. "We've been discovered." As the first explosions rocked the archive doors, Vexilin collapsed. The neural interface was breaking down, attacking her central nervous system. Ethan gathered her in his arms. "Stay with me, Vexa." Her hand touched his face, leaving a faint luminescent trace on his skin. The evidence must reach. The archive doors burst open. Through the smoke stepped a tall Valkyrian male in elaborate military dress, Admiral Krell himself, surrounded by guards. "How touching," he said, looking down at them with contempt. "The princess and her human pet. Did you really think you could stop what's been set in motion for decades?" Ethan positioned himself protectively in front of Vexilin. "It's over, Krell. The evidence has already been transmitted." "A bluff," Krell laughed. "But irrelevant now. Your deaths will serve as the perfect catalyst for the war we've engineered." As the Admiral raised his weapon, Vexilin suddenly surged forward with unexpected strength. The neural interface had created a temporary connection between her and Krell, including access to the override codes for his personal shield. For the Empire, she whispered, activating the codes. The shield collapsed. Ethan didn't hesitate, firing his concealed blaster directly at the Admiral's chest. The Imperial flagship Eternal Radiance dominated the viewscreen as the astral nomad approached. After their narrow escape from the Crimson Outpost, fighting their way through surprised guards after Admiral Krell's fall, they had sent emergency transmissions to both human and Valkyrian authorities. Now, with Krell dead and the conspiracy exposed, representatives from both species had gathered for an unprecedented joint conference. In Ethan's quarters, Vexilin stood before a mirror, dressed in full Imperial regalia for the first time since he'd known her. Golden armor accented her silver-green skin, and her platinum hair was elaborately braided with luminescent crystals. "You look," Ethan searched for words. "Like a princess," she finished with a small smile. "Like yourself," he corrected. "Remarkable." She turned to him, suddenly vulnerable despite her regal appearance. "When we dock, everything changes. Politics, protocols, expectations, they all reclaim us." Ethan nodded, unable to deny the truth of it. "Your people need you." "And what do I need?" she asked softly. Before he could answer, the communication panel chimed. They had been granted priority docking clearance. The diplomatic reception aboard the flagship was a blaze of formality. Imperial guards snapped to attention as Vexilin entered. Human diplomats bowed respectfully. Ethan, dressed in the finest clothes he owned, still woefully inadequate for the setting, stood awkwardly at her side until protocol officers separated them for the official proceedings. Hours later, alone in guest quarters far more luxurious than anything he'd experienced, Ethan stared out at the stars. The evidence they'd secured had prevented a war. The remaining conspirators were being rounded up on both sides. Heroes' commendations had been promised. None of it filled the hollow feeling in his chest. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Vexilin, still in her ceremonial attire but with her hair now loose around her shoulders. "You left the reception," she said, entering. "I didn't belong there." "And where do you belong, Ethan Frost?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility and constraint. "The Imperial Council has offered me a trade route license," he said instead of answering directly. "Exclusive rights to transport between human and Valkyrian territories. A worthy reward. And you, what happens to the princess now that peace is secured?" Vexilin moved to the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "I am to return home, resume my royal duties, eventually secure a political marriage to strengthen our new alliance." The words struck him like physical blows. "I declined," she added quietly. Ethan looked up sharply. "What?" "I informed the council that I have already chosen a consort." She turned to face him fully. "If he will have me." "Vexa, our worlds need bridges, Ethan. New connections, new understandings." Her hands found his. "Who better to forge them than those who have already crossed the divide between species?" "The council agreed to this." "Not initially." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "But I can be persuasive, and your heroism carries significant diplomatic weight." She moved closer, her form illuminating the darkness between them. "I cannot abandon my responsibilities to my people. But perhaps my greatest responsibility now is demonstrating that our species can not only coexist, but thrive together." Ethan pulled her into his arms, alien and familiar all at once. "And the astral nomad? I'm not ready to give up the stars." "Nor would I ask you to. The ambassador to human territories requires suitable transportation." Her lips found his. "And I've grown rather fond of your ship." Outside the viewport, the joined fleets of two civilizations hung in space, no longer poised for war but united in fragile peace. So much remained uncertain, so many challenges ahead for species with different biologies, histories, and expectations. But as Ethan held Vexilin close, feeling the cool luminescence of her skin against his, he knew with absolute certainty that some differences were worth embracing, and some journeys, however improbable, were destined from their first unexpected beginning. "To new horizons," he whispered against her platinum hair. "To two worlds," she answered, becoming one. The starlight caught the natural luminescence of her skin as their lips met, sealing a promise as vast as the universe that had brought them together.